So what I would like to talk about today is really an update on the Great Resignation. So let's step back a little bit and kind of talk about the Great Resignation. So it's a pandemic era phenomenon, and it remains a prominent feature of the labor market. And when we put numbers to that, 4 million American workers quit their job each month since June of 2021, looking for better opportunities elsewhere. And a study by Pew Research says that the cause of this was low pay, lack of opportunities for advancement, feeling disrespected, childcare challenges, and a need for flexibility. So these are the reasons why people just left. Millions of people left their job. However, the update on this is a recent survey done by Harris Poll for USA Today. They found some regret among the 47 million people who left their job. About 1 in 5 of those people who resigned during the pandemic say they regret it. And that's kind of interesting. And so here we have droves of people leaving their jobs, they're quitting, but 1 in 5 are now saying they regret it. So many say they wanted more pay and more responsibility. But then when they got into their new job, they realized this was not the dream job that they had wanted. And many of them were lured into these new jobs with big salaries, but didn't consider the other part of the equation, the work conditions, the work culture, the job responsibilities, and the opportunities for advancement, those other things that were important to them. So having done a lot of work in employee value proposition and employee engagement, I'm not surprised by this quitter's remorse. And the reason why I'm not surprised, there are 2 things at play here. It's not just a one-sided phenomenon. And the true drivers we need to consider are the drivers of attraction and the drivers of retention. And what we see unfolding here are those 2 drivers in action. Pay is a key driver of attraction. However, it is not a driver of retention. Employers must understand that increasing salaries is only one action they need to take. And that's the action that brings people in the door. The more difficult actions are those retention drivers, those more human-centric aspects of work. And just to give you an example, some of the top retention drivers are the culture. Is the culture healthy? Is the culture toxic? Another driver of retention is meritocracy. Is there fair treatment in the workforce? Of course, opportunities for advancement, as I talked about before, meaningful work. Flexibility is key right now. People having tasted the advantages of working from home, this is something they don't want to lose now. So flexibility is now important and being valued. So why don't business leaders get this? Well, higher pay is very transactional. And it seems and feels like, even though costly, a bit of a silver bullet. And it's not, because the total solution isn't really being considered. So the door that brought the employees in has now become a revolving door to bring them out. So what's the so what on this? Well, it's definitely a call for organizational change. The retention drivers require a change in mindset and behaviors of leaders and all the key stakeholders, and it requires all the elements of change management. And it must start from the top. This cannot be considered an HR-only effort. The key leadership needs to drive this. So what do they need to do? Well, the leadership needs to examine their culture and their values. And all those wonderful culture statements that they've created that are on their website and posted on the walls of the offices, is this the culture that employees are experiencing? So really understand what is the culture and values of the organization. And of course, ask the employees what's meaningful to them. And the flaw with a lot of employee satisfaction surveys is that it starts with what leadership thinks should be important to the employees and ask them to rate it. The better way of doing that is asking the employees, what is important to you? Start with what's important to them and then have them rate that and how well is the organization doing. The other action that's important is to examine the organizational capabilities. Do they line up to this new change? So if the mindsets and behaviors are being changed to support those retention drivers, the capabilities actually lined up. So for example, key part of this are your frontline managers. And are they modeling the right mindsets and behaviors? And if not, are they being trained? Are they getting the feedback? Are they getting rewarded for the behaviors you want them to demonstrate? So very important to see that your capabilities are lined up. Ensure that there are resources who are driving this change to move to those retention drivers, and that they're monitoring the success. And this has to be a top priority. It has to be a top priority by the leadership, and it should be communicated, and the progress should be communicated as well. So when we look at employee dissatisfaction, there's really nothing new about it. However, as I think about it, there's a new sound to it. The sound is no longer voices which often go unheard, unfortunately, but now it's a new sound. It's a sound of 40 million people walking out the door. You might call this the sound of a stampede, if you will. So as business leaders, this requires a lot of focus and attention, and it can be a differentiator in attracting top talent and retaining them in the organization. And it should be just something that business leaders do in a very visible way.